Hello, my name is Paula Delliff, and I'm the Academic Dean of the English Department at Thomas Jefferson High School. The purpose of this video is to show you how to use the question banks within the TSI course to create your own quizzes, your own assignments, your own practice. If you've never used Question Bank before, then this will help. I'll explain to you how to do everything. So to get to basically, what is a question bank? Every time you create a question, it goes into an unfiled question bank. So those question banks build within the Canvas course. You can, if you want to, organize your question bank. So it's sort of like in the Google Drive when you have a bunch of files, you can organize them into folders, right? So it's a little bit easier to find stuff. So the way to get to your question bank, the first thing that you want to do is you want to click on the quizzes option on your side menu. And then here's what it probably looks like normal. This probably looks, if you're experienced with Canvas, this probably looks pretty typical to you. These are all the quizzes that I've created, and they're organized into the modules. But there's also, underneath this, there's sort of behind the scenes in this, is a question bank that all these questions are also classified into. And the students can't see the question bank. The question bank is only visible to the teacher, the instructor on the course. So if you want to see what the question banks look like, and if you want to start to work with the question banks, you can go into Manage Question Banks. You're probably not going to need to do this unless you want to look at them. This is not how you create the quiz. This is just how you organize your question banks. Okay, so you'll see this would look different if you've never built your own or organized your question banks. What you would just have is this one at the bottom. This everybody has, unfiled questions. And if you've created tons and tons of quizzes, your unfiled questions all go into that question bank, whether you ask them to or not. So if you opened up one of your classes from last year and you gave a bunch of quizzes, you'd see a number of questions in that unfiled question bank. What I have done is created different categories of questions. And the reason that I created the different categories of questions is because when I design my TSI practice, one of two things is true. I either want to practice just a certain skill, so I just want to pull certain questions when I create the practice. If I'm working on literary passages, I don't want to be having other questions in there. I just want my literary passages. So in order to find those easily when I create a quiz, I have it categorized this way. The other thing is sometimes when I do a TSI practice, I want a broad spectrum of quizzes. So I don't want it to be totally randomized. I want there to be some questions with a couple of inference questions, a couple of author's craft questions, a couple of dangling modifier questions, because I want it to look like the test they're going to take. The problem with some of the commercially available or some of the practices for TSI you find online is some of them are disproportionately about main idea and primary purpose. I've taken one where out of the 15 questions, like 8 of them are asking about purpose and main idea. On the actual TSI, they're probably only going to get 1 or 2. So you want them to be prepared to handle all different types of questions and not just one type. So this way, by having the questions categorized into different categories, you're able to build a comprehensive test that is representative of what they'd find, or you're able to say, today we're just going to work on tone. Today we're just going to work on clear and complete sentences. So clear and correct sentences. So that's why I've taken the unfiled questions and actually created question banks to divide the questions so that you can pull questions from all the different question banks and know that you're creating a representative of the task or that you're working on the given skill that you want to work on. So that's what the question banks look like. The editing questions, there's 4 different categories. If you saw the editing video or looked at the editing slideshow, you know that I've kind of divided these up according to these are the questions where part of the sentence is underlined, and the students have to decide whether they want to change that part of the sentence and what they would change it to. Essay revision are the ones with the numbered sentences where they ask how would you combine these 2 sentences? How would you revise this sentence? And then of course we get into the reading, which are separated into SP stands for short passage. connecting selections are the two selections where you get one question about two selections, and the literary passage is the longer passage with the 4 questions. So that's what the question bank is. Now you might say, so you can also look at this. So let's say you're like, well, I want to see what she has in there. I want to see what the district has in there for me to choose from. So then you can go through and click on, and then you'll see the different questions, right? This is not where you create quizzes. This is just where you see what's available. Okay. So you could say, oh, look through these and say, wow, I really like that one. This one, I want to include that one. So let me show you now that that's just give you have a little bit of background about what a question bank is and how, like, why I put them together. I'm going to show you how to create a quiz from question bank. And so all of this stuff over here where it says add a question, this is not where you create a quiz. This is where you add to the question bank. Okay, that does not, and that will not go out to the students. The question bank, the students do not have access to that. I know I said that before, it bears repeating. So this is more editing the actual question bank. So it's, again, I compare it to taking a bunch of files on Google Drive and organizing them into different folders. So this is just an organizational structure. But maybe you'll see when I show you how to create a quiz using the question bank, you'll see why I organized it this way. So to create a quiz, I'm going to go back to the quiz. So you might have seen I went over to this tab on the side, and this is probably a very familiar view to you. So I'm going to click on quiz because the same way you would, I'm going to create a quiz. I'm going to create classic quiz because that's the one that I like to use better. And so you get the typical things here. This is, if you've done quizzes before, I'm not going to show you anything that you're like, yeah, I've been there, done that. You set your due dates. If you want to put an access code on it, you can. Where is that access code? Oh, require an access code. If you want to require an access code, that's where you would do it. If you want to show one question at a time, which is a strong recommendation for TSI because that's how they see it, you can do that. You can also, I know this is harsh, but you can lock the question after answering, which means they're not allowed to go back to it. And I know that seems like meanie, like why wouldn't you let the kids go back? That's how the TSI is designed. So I might do that. You don't have to do that. You can let the students have a less rigid test or practice experience. If you're not looking to make it like the TSI, you might be like, no, this is just for practice. I don't want to be so intense right now. You can do that. I would always suggest that you recommend to the students that they know that they can't go back to questions. So they understand that that's a testing practice they'll eventually have to build up. So here we go to the questions. This is probably very familiar to you if you've used the quiz function before on Canvas. So this is what most people will do. They'll click in new question and they'll write their question and then they'll go about their business. So if you want to tap into our already existing question banks, you would use this function or you might use this function. So I'm going to show you this one first. This is if you would like to build a quiz where everybody has the same quiz. Okay, everybody's going to get the same exact questions. Everybody's going to have the same quiz experience. Okay. Instead of going to new question, you would click on find question. That's going to enable you to tap into those question banks. So then you'll see on the side all the different question banks that I have for you. Okay. You'll see other question banks that are not for you, like this one here, questions that's because it's tapping into all my question banks. So just ignore that. So you're just looking for the one, the reading SP author's craft, that's short passage author's craft, short passage inference, short passage look back, and then connecting selections, literary passage. So you can see that there's all the different question banks, and you won't see those extra ones that are like duplicates. The only reason you're seeing it on the video is because they're also drawing from my other TSI classes. Okay, so you won't be able to draw from my TSI classes, obviously. So let's say, for example, I want to create an editing one. I want to do a little editing practice. And I want it to be general because I want to get a sense of where the kids are. So what I'm going to do, then I'm going to click on this. I know I'm going to put together let's do a 6 question practice. So I know I want at least 2 of those to be, agreement and pronoun reference. Now, the problem with this is you can't tell which questions they are unless you view it in the question bank. So if you know you want specific questions, you might want to go through and say, I want the first and the third one. So let's say I've done that work. I'm going to ask for the first and the third. I want there to be a couple of clear and correct sentences. So I know I liked the last two. I really wanted to incorporate the last two. Okay. And then I want to do one dangling modifier. I'm not super picky about that one. I'm just going to pick one randomly. And I want to do one diction. And I know from looking at the question bank that I want to do number 5. So then what I do is I go add questions and the questions get added for me. Oh, it only added the one. Did I not keep those other ones in there? Okay, let me try that again. It's okay to make mistakes. So I know that I wanted to do what did I say? I wanted to do the first 2. Okay, I think you have to add them from one category at a time. I'm glad I made that mistake actually, because now you can see that. So add it from one category at a time. Don't try to go back and forth between different categories. So I did my diction one. I just did my pronoun agreement one. I'm going to clear and correct. I wanted to use the last 2, so I add those 2. Remember that before you change question banks, learn from my mistake. You want to add them first. And then I think I also wanted to add, I think for the dangling modifier, I just picked a random one. I wasn't super picky. Okay. So I'm going to add those in. And so now I have different questions. You can change the order. Like if you don't want, these two are the both agreement ones. And I'm like, well, I don't want them to have the agreement ones in a row. I want them to be spaced out. You can still move them around. You don't have to go with that same order. If you're like, let me move the dangling modifier one up here, between there. And then you have yourself a quiz, a practice quiz, and you can add any instructions here. So you might say this is something like editing, comprehensive practice, or whatever you want to call it. So this means that it's a sampling of the editing. If you want to do like this is a 6 question, and then you set your due dates, you set everything like that, and then you would save and publish it. I'm going to actually cancel because I don't want to add this one in there. So let me show you that again, just because I think it's a little complicated. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a reading quiz that uses, I'm going to create a reading quiz that uses a literary passage and 2 connecting selections. I'm just going to do those 2 skills. That's what I'm interested in working on. I'm going to click on, so I created a new quiz. I'm going to click on classic quiz. And I'm going to I'm going to go to the find questions. I assume that I put all my details in, my due dates and everything. And then I'm going to scroll down until I find the reading literary passages. And this one's a little easier to see which ones I'm looking at because you can kind of see the, so I want to do the one from Paul's case. I'm like, that one we haven't done yet. It's going to accomplish what I want it to accomplish. So I'm going to click on there, and then I'm going to add that question. And so the question comes up already. Okay. And then I'm like, well, I also wanted to add a couple connecting selections because we're working on this. That's the beginning of the reading test. I want to work on those first 6 questions. So I'm going to put 2 of those on. So I find where it says reading connecting selections. And I've kind of done my homework a little bit, and I know I want to do this. I know I want to do this one about whether college athletes should be paid. And then it's kind of longer passages, so I'm going to balance that with one that has slightly shorter passages, the one about the vegetarian diet. Again, you can pick the ones out when you select them. And then you have your questions here. And then you would do the same thing. You would save and publish. And then you would have that. The nice thing I want to say about, okay, let me just cancel this one and delete it because I don't want it. The nice thing about all the questions in the question bank, I believe, I've hopefully done that right. I'll show you. Let me just, one of the things I'll show you is let me pull up this one. This is a literary passage. So I'm going to show you from the edit view so you can see what's a nice feature about this. If you look at the questions, and I'll show the question details, one of the nice things about it is I give the explanations for the answers. And I like that because you can have students work in a self-paced capacity. You can say, work on these, do this practice, and then they can go through and they can see the explanation. So, question 2, the effect of the figurative language, this explains why the answer is right. And unless I miss something, every single question in the question bank should have an explanation. I think that's really helpful because I get super frustrated when I don't see an explanation. And I also have made sure that the explanations are even when the kids get the answer correct, because sometimes we guess, and I want them to still have that explanation, even if they get there's a little like good job or a little excellent work, so they feel like good about it. But then I said, here's the explanation, so that because again, like a lot of times students will guess, or even when I get things right and I kind of like know, but I really want to see what the right answer is because I was kind of torn between two answers. I like to always see the explanation, whether I get it right or wrong. So that's kind of a nice feature of this. I'm going to show you one more thing you can do with the question bank. Let's say, for example, you wanted to give a diagnostic and you wanted every kid to have a different test. You wanted it to be a little bit more randomized. You didn't want it to be like Jimmy and Johnny are sitting next to each other and they both have the same quiz and they can kind of peek and they can text answers to each other, which hopefully in person they won't be doing those kinds of things or we'll be able to catch them. But just in case, let's say you want to have a different testing experience for every single student who comes in. There is a way to do that. Your first few steps are going to be the same. I don't know how to use the new quizzes, by the way. I should get some training on that. Okay, you go into your questions, and instead of doing find questions, you do this new question group. Okay, so again, this is if you're creating the question from scratch, and a lot of you have probably already done this. This is if you're trying to find the questions, you know which questions you're looking for, and you're being very intentional. This is if you're like in the random mode, and you want to just have the computer do the thinking for you. So you click on new question group, and so I want to start with the literary passage. And then so what I'm going to do is it says link to a question bank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link it to my literary passage questions. So here they are. And so what that means is the computer is going to choose for you. Okay, the computer is going to go through all 13 literary passages and it's going to pick a random one. And it could be a different one for every student. Maybe just by chance, two students happen to have the same one. But it will pick it randomly. And that way, every student can have a different testing experience. And that is this most closely replicates the TSI because the students are choosing their own, or the computer's choosing the questions and it's going to be different for everybody. So this is closer to the TSI than anything I can think of, especially if you have it lock the question after. So let me go back to that and show you that again. Let me create that group. All right, so now it's going to pick a random literary passage, like maybe one person gets To Build a Fire, and another person gets Old Fashioned Girl, and another person gets Grapes of Wrath. It's going to be different for different students because the computer's just picking it randomly. Again, for the details, if you're trying to be closer to the TSI, very close to it, what you would do is show one class at a time and lock after answering. But I would definitely warn the students, even though Canvas warns the students, I would give them an extra warning like, hey guys, once you submit that answer, it's gone. And the reason that I'm doing that is because that's what they would do on the TSI. So once again, going back to this, then for my next question, I might want to have I'm going to do one literary or one connecting selection because I think that they need to practice that. So I'm going to pick one. There's two on the actual test, but I want this to be a little shorter because we're working with possibly less time. So then I would click create group. It would pick one of the selections randomly, and then I would continue in kind. The only thing I would say is if you want to do more than one inference question and you want to spread them out, what I would do is I would do this. Let me find my inference questions right here. And so I would select that bank. I could have it pick 5, but I don't know if those would go 5 in a row. I'd have to test that out. So I might just have them link at different points. So then I would do 1 point per question. And if you're wondering why I put 4 points per question up here, that's because the literary passage, I have it as a multiple drop down. So each question should be worth 4 points because there's 4 questions. So then I would call this inference. Or maybe I could just pick like 2. I don't know if they would go in the same order. You know what? We'll see. Okay, and then I would go create group. And let's say I'm only going to work on inference questions, and then I'm also going to work on author's craft. Those are usually the hardest ones for the students. And then I want to do 2 of these. This is a little bit of an experiment because I want to see if it puts the questions, if they're, okay, let me see. I know what I'm trying to say. And then let's do 1 more. Let's do primary purpose. And again, by having the question banks, I can make sure that the students are getting a nice representation of what I think the test will probably be for them. Okay, and then I click create group. So then I'm going to go ahead and save this, which you haven't seen me do before, but I wanted to, and I should name it. I'm going to be able to find it later so I can delete it. Okay, so then, so if I want to preview it, this is giving me all the questions at once. Yeah, so what it does, if you have it select, like I did, if you have it selected like 3 inference questions, it's going to put them all in a row. And so if you want it to be different, you could, if you want it to be like more like not all together, not grouped together, you would probably have to create questions for different banks. The only thing with that is you might end up getting the same question twice. It could happen because the question banks aren't that big yet. Hoping to get them big. Okay, so that is how you create a quiz that is going to be randomized for the students. So that's it. Those are the different ways that you could use it. We've built in, we have built in different practices for each skill. I'll show you that real quick. Like here, we've built in 2 comprehensive practices. So if you're like, I don't want to deal with those question banks, I don't want to make my own quizzes, I got stuff to do. I got you. I hear you. And then if you're like, well, I just want to work on literary passage practice, I have 13 different practices built in there, but I put 3 here. Okay. So I've already built some for people. So if you're not really into this using the question banks, then you probably already stopped watching the video. But I do have practices for different things. And, you know, as the demand increases, as we continue to grow the course and the question banks, we can add to those. But so if you're not really feeling if you don't really feel the need to create your own, there's some built in there for you. And then down here, of course, these will not be in the question bank. Why? Because they're assignments, not quizzes. So you're not going to find the essays in the quiz banks. I don't know if that's something we should do. I can see if that's something people want. I typically don't have them take the multiple choice and the essay at the same time because there usually isn't time. We don't usually have them practice the test that way. We just don't have the time for it. But I don't know if you do, then I don't think it would be too hard to create an essay quiz, like make it into an essay test as opposed to making it into an assignment, which is what I did here. The only thing is I don't know if you could put the rubric on it. I like having the rubric on there. Okay, well, now I'm starting to babble, so I'm going to end this video, but hopefully if you've been interested in trying to use question banks to create your tasks, that you have a little bit more insight in how to do it. Again, my name is Paula Doloff. My contact information is kind of all over the different aspects of this course, so please reach out to me if you have any questions, and I hope you have a wonderful day.